Okay, slight spoiler warning. I'm not gonna tell you everything that happens in the game. I'm not gonna say, I'm not gonna tell you, I'm gonna, especially for stuff that takes place in the very, very, very late game, I'm gonna very actively avoid spoilers for that, but I'm not gonna go nuclear in avoiding spoilers. Like, I'm not gonna do like Arlo. You're gonna see, you could risk seeing most of the new Pokemon that aren't really supposed to be a big surprise. Okay? You could see a lot of the areas in this. If you only listen to it as audio, then you're probably much more safe, but I'm not giving you any complete guarantees, but you're probably safe. But if you're looking at this visually, then yeah, fucking knows what you'll see. Okay? So, you'll be warned about spoilers, okay? Okay, so Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I was initially going to do a whole proper scripted review of this, but I don't have that much very original stuff to say. And also, it's like, this is increasingly irrelevant by the day. I don't have time for that. So I'm just going to spew out my thoughts. But of course, that can be quite complicated because I think the game is broadly pretty good. Like, I'd say it's a solid A tier game, but very much not an S tier game. So, like, yeah, that's a thing. But like, yeah, but it's like in terms of talking about it, there's a few things that I really like, and then a million things that just kind of annoy me and drag it down, like into A or B tier from what would otherwise be an S tier game. So yeah, it's a very interesting game to talk about, eh? For one, I've got to acknowledge the bugs. Like, this is the first thing I'm talking about, and yeah. One of my initial things that was happening when the game first released was everyone was talking about the bugs, and no one was talking about everything else to an insane degree. I felt like the game was being like almost unfairly represented in just like, oh yeah, this game's just a bunch of bugs, and it's like, no, it isn't. It's not just a bunch of bugs. I saw people comparing it to Cyberpunk 2076, and okay, either these people are full of shit, or I had a false impression of just how bad Cyberpunk 2076 actually was, and it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was. You know, like the bugs in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, it's like, yeah, they are an unavoidable part of the experience. You're gonna have to deal with them. You're gonna see them a lot. They're mostly visual, but they're rather gross visual bugs, and not in the sense of oh my god, look at that, that's gross, but like gross in the sense of bad, like egregious. It's a big part of the game, and it's something one does have to deal with and come to terms with to play the game, and it's bad, but like there's a million other more interesting problems to talk about, and there's good stuff. Of course, now nearly 2 months on, people have started talking about other things, but regardless, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the bugs. So yeah, this game is an open world game. In this section I'm going to talk about the game design. So needless to say, this shook up the mainline game's formula quite a lot. Obviously you can initially go like initially after the tutorial, you can go east or west from the central Madrid based city. But it's like yeah, the game is relatively linear for an open world game, but it's like it's technically a Breath of the Wild style open world map, but you're especially early on since you imagine if you got the runes over the course of Breath of the Wild instead of getting them in the Great Plateau. That's a lot of what this is like, and so like you get that, and so it's like it's for an open world game it is very linear. It's not like it's a lot it's in a lot of ways it's almost like if you had an older Pokemon game and you just removed all the roadblocks. In terms of design, that's a lot what it plays like. So yeah, that's a whole thing. Also, a complaint I have, in the trailers, they advertised the Sorrowful Street, Victory Road, and the Path of Legends as 3 different pathways to the completion of the game, right? 3 different optional pathways so that you can you can somewhat choose your own objective in the game, right? And I have some complaints about how they executed this. One, I feel like it would have been better if they had just let you do these like they could have pushed you towards doing these tasks, but like at the start of the game they just tell you these are the 3 pathways you can take through the game. I feel like they could have used more subtlety on that. And two, they all give you different rewards. If you want to be able to explore the world better, like if you want to have more abilities than move around and jump, such as go over water without there being a bridge, or like pretty much anything this beyond the very basic movement you get when you first get your mount, then you have to do the Path of Legends. If you want to be able to catch higher level Pokemon, which of course becomes all the Pokemon later into the game you get, or by items that are actually suitable for dealing with Pokemon, like, better Pokeballs to catch high level Pokemon, or, potions that will actually heal the HP of your increasingly high level Pokemon, then you just need to do the gym challenge. There's no way around that. And then for Starfall Street, you get various TM related stuff, which it's less necessary than the others. Frankly, the Starfall Street felt very unfleshed out. It's not like you get a very unimportant reward for doing it. The story of it, frankly, made me cringe quite a lot. Less so the further in I got, but frankly, people back in 2013, when X and Y released, were calling Team Flare the apex of the megalomaniacal evil team, who are just like, they're so bad for the sake of being bad that it's just ridiculous, They literally wanted to blow up the whole world in the name of beauty or whatever the fuck it was. And it's like, Team Star is like the Team Flare. It's just the apex of these goofy evil teams we've been getting the last 2 generations. Like, Team Skull, they were cool. Like, they were goofballs. They did stupid shit. It was amusing. Team Yell is a breakdown, one because it was very similar, but they had the whole crazy fucking thing going. It was a slightly different aesthetic. And it's like, yeah, they stay warped. Then Team Star are just a shit show. One, their design is hardly changed from that of the regular Academy students, which makes them look very generic. 2, instead of having various evil team encounters with them in the overworld where they're, doing bad things, and you have to stop them, instead they have various bases you go to, and then you take down the base. Frankly, I wouldn't really consider them very the only really evil things we see them doing is when we see a pair of their grunts bullying Penny at the start of the game, and the 2 roads they block outside of 2 of their bases, which feel very much like an excuse to say, yeah, these people are totally bad guys, as well as to pressure the player into doing that base. It's we have as many grunt battles as we do admin battles because of the way that these bases are designed. In fact, if we count the leader of Team Star, then we have more admin battles than we have grunt battles. It's like, this Team Star is a really disappointing evil team, albeit, like all the other evil teams, their music still slaps. Oh, and to the extent that they do have unique aesthetic, it's only unique within this game, it's still a continuation of the general grungy, punky aesthetic that's gone with all the goofy evil teams. For Generation 10, the next pair of games, I do very much want to see a more evil team. They don't need to be trying to destroy or radically alter or take over the world, they just need to be seriously bad guys. Like, for the sake of a change, we've had 3 generations of complete goofballs at this point. I want to see a group of people who are more evil than Team Skull, maybe like on par with Team Rocket. Like, there's the classic idea people throw around of having a mafia evil team, where it's like, well, they're the mafia. They're organized crime. I mean, they don't exactly have an ultimate goal, an ultimate megalomaniacal goal, but like, the Mafia are generally understood as being, well, bad guys, and they do bad guy things, Hell, Spain works very well for an open world region because it's a spherical area, and Italy, especially if you take enough artistic liberties, the mainland's a rectangle, you can make that kind of spherical, especially if we include Sicily, as well as that one island, and we take also because there's 2 islands east of Italy, I can't remember the name for the life of me. If we took both of those islands and made them part of this Italy region, then I think this would work. That would work very well for a second open world game, for a second open world Pokemon game. You could have more time. You could have all kinds of tiebacks to Scarlet and Violet because Spain and Italy, they're right next to each other. Also, Spain works very well for an open world Pokemon game because open worlds, for the sake of avoiding blandness, tend to be very hilly, and real world Southern Europe is very hilly due to ongoing Himalayan mountain formation. But and so that also applies in an Italy-based region. Like, Italy would work very... I hope we get an open-world Italy-based region next or sometime in the future. Oh, and the whole Mafia thing I was just bringing up? Well, what country is most associated with the Mafia? How many countries got the... What country has given several other countries their Mafia? Oh, look, Italy. it works fairly well, but I'm getting stunlocked and sidetracked away from the whole design thing, and this particular recording is getting rather long, so I'm gonna cut it here and start another recording. Actually, before I go back to the main point, a region based on most European countries would probably be fairly good for more open world games. They're relatively small, so it can explain why you can just scroll around the camera and see the entire region, like what's the case in Paldea. Like Germany, Poland, Romania, just to name a few, they're all fairly squarical. They're all pretty hilly in a lot of areas. But Italy's still probably better than most of these, again, because it's close to Spain, so it can connect back to Scarvio. Plus, it's more consistently mountainous than the rest, except for Switzerland. Switzerland would also be a good region, but, well, there'd be a lot of areas comparable to Mount Glaciato everywhere in it. You know, it's, basically there's Switzerland, there's basically just a bunch of valleys in between really high mountains. So it would certainly be a pain in the ass to travel between the different valley areas if this were made into an open world game. Maybe they'd have to have tunnels everywhere or something. Do they have such a thing in actual Switzerland? I know they have a really cool train system, so maybe that's the way we get between the different, like, croutons, as they'd be called in Switzerland, referring to basically the different valley areas. Hey, maybe we could even have something like Pokemon Legends Arceus, where it's like there's several different open areas you travel between. It's just the different valley areas. Or maybe we could have something that's like functions like that, but is still technically a Breath of the Wild like open world similar to Paldea. But I think all of his ideas would work. But anyway, going back to Italy, it has the whole we can do the Mafia Evil team there. It can easily connect back to Scarlet and Violet. Like it's gotten consistently mountainous geography. It's just all around a good candidate for another region following the vein of Scarlet and Violet. Anyway, actually ending this stunlock now. Also, by the way, since I stopped talking about the bugs, there has been an increase of background noise, so you might, like, around the area I'm recording, so you might have picked up some of that. That's what that is. It's just random my folks going around doing their thing, just so you'll know. Anyway, but yeah, going back to design, finally, it's like it's also the case that if you get to the end of the Path of Legends, then they're like, oh, we need people with these two specific skill sets that match the other rival, which just happen to be what the other rivals have, to go with us if we're gonna actually complete the narrative of the Path of Legends here. And then it's like, so you have to complete the other storylines to get them to befriend those characters, and then you get into one final ultimate climax area, like in the middle of the big crater at the end of this, and then you have a final boss, and literally, because people didn't want to spoil what this final boss was when they were making remixes of it for the first month or so after those started coming out, they were literally calling it the final boss theme, and after you beat this final boss, you see the game's end credits. It's like, this crosses into the level of false advertising. Like, it's like you have to do all three of these things to beat the game. It's like these are the three things you have to do. Like they're like, looking at it from a design perspective, it's like there's in past previous Pokemon games there's three design elements: the gym challenge, and then there's the evil team plot and the legendary plot. Now, in a lot of older games, the evil team plot and the legendary plot is connected. They've only become two permanently distinct things in more recent games, basically since the evil teams became massive goofballs. Like, the evil team plot has become permanently separate from the legendary plot, but the Path of Legends, Starfall, referring to Team Star, Street, and, well, Victory Road, which they called it that as an excuse to make it so that all of the paths would be, you could go through the game are like, have like or referenced as different like streets or roads or pathways. You get the point. And it's like, yeah, just so everyone knows, the actual Victory Road in this game can be accessed upon finishing the tutorial, and it's just a little strip with no puzzles and a bunch of level 10 Pokemon. It's pathetic. But let's be honest, the thing called Victory Road it's the gym challenge. But yeah, that was a very disappointing thing. Another annoying design thing that's much more petty, kind of moving into the petty gripes section here, because, again, as I said, there's a couple things I really like, and just a million things that kind of annoy me about this game. There's the fact that early on in the game, all the Pokemon are small, and okay, so actually, I probably better pre-emphasize this. In Pokemon Legends Arceus, they made it so that you could catch Pokemon in the open world by throwing them, and you have to actually initiate a battle by throwing your own Pokeball at it, like with your Pokemon in it. You could just bumping into a Pokemon in the overworld wouldn't automatically initiate a battle. They just undid this in Scarlet and Violet and made it how it works in Sword and Shield, except now the Pokemon aren't confined to the tall grass or confined to near the tall grass or anything. They just go about doing their thing. Like there's no tall grass mechanic anymore. That's a thing of the past now in these games and in this game, and it's very it's just annoying how you're going about and then suddenly whoop the it's like on the earlier Pokemon are naturally kind of being often the first stage of three stage evolution lines are very small, and so you can't see them, especially since the earlier routes do have a lot of tall grass. That's a literal description of what's there, not a game design mechanic description. And so you can't see them, and so you're bumbling about, constantly bumping into Pokemon you can't even see, and this problem just plagued the whole South Province. It was which is basically the southern quarter of the whole region, excluding Alfrenada, the whole Alfrenada plateau, which should really be considered part of the West Province for a bunch of reasons. You know what, I'm going on a rant about that. One, the West Province is basically the Portugal-based area, and Portugal, there's an area north of Portugal, it's part of Spain, there's an area south of Portugal, it's part of Spain, plus the Afronata Plateau is really high-level Pokemon, and the South Province is basically characterized as an early game starting out area, plus it's also the case that you can only get atop the Afronata Plateau either by going through a cave from within the West Province, or by climbing up the side of the mountain, which is literally the last ability that your mount gets after beating the last legendary Titan. I'm not sure. Okay, so here's a design thing I'm not sure about. After beating each legendary Titan, you get a Herba Mystica and you feed it to your Pokemon, to your mount, and suddenly they can move. They get new movement ability. I'm not sure if if these movement abilities are tied to each of the different Titans, or if you just get them in a given order no matter what Titan you fight. But either way, it's the case. If it's just you get them in a specific order, because it felt like a pre-designed order when I was playing through it. Like the order I put them in if I was pre-designing it. These are different abilities, but it's the last. The climbing ability is the last one you get, and if it isn't, then if the different abilities are tied to the specific Titans, well. Yeah, you get the climbing ability in the highest level area outside of Area 0. So it's kind of a late game content, being able to the ability that lets you access this without going through a West Province. So in short, the whole what's it the whole yeah, that's just a stupid thing that I went on a rant about. But yeah, outside of the whole Afronata Plateau, the South Province is consistently plagued by this problem of encountering tiny Pokemon you can't even see. Like, it's legitimately very, very annoying. Like, this is one of the first things I noted down was like, yeah, I'm going to talk about this in the review, because it's really bad. But before I really get into the gripes, I'm going to mention a little story that happened while playing through the game. So, I didn't get the game till the 22nd, so that's 4 days after it's released. It might well have been patched by then, so that might not be why I had as bad an experience with the bugs as some people did. But anyway, I got on the 22nd, and I basically played for the tutorial on that day, okay? And so that was that whole thing. Then on the 23rd is when I really dived into the game, and I have a little story to tell that really... I want to tell it, okay? So I first went into the game, right, and I got past the tutorial area. Then I went out west of Mesagoza because I felt that the game kind of wanted the player to go east, and so I was being rebellious because this is an open world game and this is my God-given rightness. Oh God. God-given right. in this cool damn region. Yep. Oh God, this gag. Oh well, but it's basically, yeah, so I decided to go out, and I'm generally non-conformist type person, but anyway, so I went out east of west of our initial starting area, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do in the game. I wasn't really interested in any of the three objectives, So I was just like, I'm just gonna go out and explore, and I'll see what I do. I was like, maybe I'll just catch Pokemon for the Dex. Me being completely ignorant of how much the game forces you to do all three of the things. So I went out west. I just kind of bummed around for a while. Caught this cool salt Pokemon. Realized I can't go over water yet. That's then I So I gradually went out further and further west, gradually getting more and more out leveled. Eventually, I went into this mountain area. I paused because it suddenly just started out of this cool guitar solo for a moment that just caught me really off guard, and it was a cool moment. Okay, so I just gradually went west and west after getting past Cortinando. So eventually I decided to go south because where does the south road lead? Is that some big sciencey research station type place? Then I looked on the map and realized, oh no, that's a town. Actually, I think that happened after the story. So I went south and then I eventually went to Alfrenata Cave. I found that I couldn't jump high enough to get properly into the cave, so trying anything was useless. But it's like I could sometimes bullshit high jump design areas by just trying again and again, hoping I'd get lucky. But then I encountered one of the Pokemon, and outside the cave there's like level 15 Pokemon. Inside the cave there's level 35 Pokemon. I eventually got away from it. Then I hit another Pokemon. Suddenly, same thing what happened, just something happened. I got away faster than this time. I ran back up north to the Pokemon Center. Then I decided to go along the road past these windmills. Then Orphan told me about this Titan, legendary Titan that's dropping rocks. And I'm like, oh, there's this really sharp mountain in front of me. I wonder where the Titan is. And I'm also just like, oh look, rocks are falling down. So I go up, then I'm like, ooh, I want to see this. So I get closer and closer, getting further and further up the mountain. Just in anticipation. Next thing I know, I've gone up too far, and suddenly the Titan has cornered me on the top of the mountain as like it goes up a hill. Then it's like a single road, and then the other side's too steep to go down, and then the Titan's blocking the way down, and so suddenly I'm stuck in a battle against it. I presume I'm under-leveled, because it's like I've not done really much defense up to this point. I've just kind of traveled through areas and running away from increasing number of Pokemon because they're really strong. So it's like, surely I'm severely under-leveled for this. There's no way I can handle this. This is going to be a shit show. Then I go ahead, but I decide to try anyway, and so I fight the Pokemon, and yes, it's a big struggle. I was probably under-leveled in hindsight. And immediately after fighting finishing the battle, I was like, I'm not sure I'm actually under-leveled, but in hindsight, I think I probably was. And this happens as the sun's setting in game, and it's like, it's just this really cool scene that stuck in my mind really well of fighting this giant monster baby stork that drops bombs or rocks in place of bombs on you, and it's just fighting it. It was constant struggle the whole way through. Eventually, I was down to one Pokemon left. This Pokemon could take out any of my Pokemon's HP in 2 hits. I could use one of my basic revives, which I couldn't even buy those at the time, but I had multiple of them to heal up a specific Pokemon I wanted to use to try and finish it off near the end of the battle. But the problem with that was that basically, if I used the revive to heal it up, it would take my current Pokemon, then I'd switch into it, and then I'd have to use my move and pray to God that it doesn't outspeed me and then wipe out my Pokemon, and thus meaning I'd lose the battle. So I decided to take my 1 max revive and risk it all on this bet. I used to heal up the Pokemon, and then the Bombardier took it down half its HP in 1 turn. Then I took out the Bombardier. Then I went away and did the whole Titan thing where they go in and break into their cave to get the Herba Mystica. Then Narvin came, and then suddenly it's like, oh, and then suddenly going by and then just getting revenge on this just stupid giant bird. And then there was the whole thing with the Herba Mystica inside and sandwich making and all that, yada yada yada. And suddenly I was in this cutscene and I realized what just happened to me was a story. Not a pre-planned set of story events necessarily. It's more than that. This is a unique story to my experience. This is something that happened to me while I was playing the game. Parts of it were pre-planned. Elements of it are pre-planned. It's made of largely pre-planned elements. I mean, technically, it's all pre-planned. Someone had to program all of the lines of code that made this happen. But this is my story that happened to me that I'm telling to you here. Also, I accidentally hit the thing I'm fidgeting with against my chair. You almost certainly heard that, and it almost certainly sounded like, oh, look, it happened again. Shit. Anyway, it's like, and that's like, it's my story, and that's the really good thing I really love about open world games is just you can go about. It's just like inevitably, if you play for an open world game, you're gonna have a couple events that are just your event, the thing that happened to you. They're your story that happened to you while you played that game, and it's like there's something really magical about that. That's I really like that about this. And so, yeah, that was a. This story also gets even more narrativizey and cool if I were to. It would get even more narrativizey and cool if I was to explain all what the game actually considers to be happening all the time, as opposed to what was going through my mind IRL playing the game. Albeit, it would also become significantly longer and more drawn out at that point. So I'm not going to waste your time with that. And lastly, for the positives. I had in my mind a moment ago. Let me think about it. Oh yeah, an open world Pokemon game was an interesting idea because typically open worlds are set in. Typically they're set in medieval times, which well, bluntly I hate the medieval fantasy aesthetic. Something about it just doesn't jive with me. Something about it just looks too. It's almost depressing. Is it boring? Is it depressing? Is it generic? Is it blah? Is it blah? I don't know. I don't like fantasy as an aesthetic, and almost all open world games fall into that. There's a couple of exceptions, mostly futuristic cyberpunk city. Oopsie doopsie there. So, my iPad was like, oh, you only have 10% power left. And so that cut out the recording and made it stop. So that happened, and then after that happened, iMovie decided to start being a little fucking bitch. Like, seriously, back in the day when I was first started making videos, and I wasn't nearly as used to iMovie's bullshit as I am now, I used to joke that I have to beat it into working on a basic fundamental level, and this reminded me of those days. The last recording ended 10 minutes ago, and that's just because of iMovie being a stupid little cunt. I'm actually I'm mad. Ugh. So yeah, earlier on in that whole spout, I was joking to myself that, oh, hey, you're getting yourself worked up. That's gonna be good for the section about all the gripes. But honestly, I came into this hungry. I'm now hungry because time has passed. Well, my iPad's on low battery, so it can only record for so long. And I'm also tired of dealing with iMovie's bullshit. So frankly, I'm gonna wrap up this section on the positives, and then I'm gonna dip and finish the audio for this later. Okay, some big background noise just to add insult to injury there. But anyway, as I was saying, open world games tend to be fantasy, and I don't like that. Occasionally you get cyberpunk cities, but you don't. But Pokemon games, like, they're set in the modern world, or something approximating the modern world, maybe a couple decades advanced of us technologically and socially and such. But like, generally a relatively modern world, and it's like a world that's generally representative of the modern world. And I just think an open world game set in that. I found that whole idea just broadly interesting, even though it was very much an inadvertent byproduct of the fact they made an open world Pokemon game. I mean, it's not the only set in the only open world set in the late 20th, early 21st century. There's the Spider-Man PS4 game from 5 years ago. Fuck. Or is it from 6 years ago now? Fucking hell. I'm not sure. Was that... I think they came out That might have came out when it's been P5 and that's in 2017, and that's 6 years ago. Fucking hell. I thought that was only just now 5 years ago in 2018. Ugh. Anyway. Actually, no, yeah, it was 2018 or 20... Yeah, it was 2018, so it's only 4 years ago since it was later 2018, I think. Okay. Anyway, getting sidetracked again. But it was just a broadly interesting thing to have an open world set in the current day, and not in a relatively normal world, as opposed to some crazy fantasy or sci-fantasy world. So I just thought that was unique and cool. If I had any other thoughts I wanted to express there, they were lost over the course of those 11 minutes of iMovie bullshit. Yeah, I've caught myself. Yeah, I saw the timestamp, and it's like, oh, before this bit of audio that I'm recording right now, it's like it was 25 minutes long already. For me, that's an incredibly long video. So hey, at least anyone who views this is gonna give me a fuck ton of watch minutes. So, right. So, about 15 minutes ago, the audio got cut out again by my iPad being like, oh, you have 5% left. So now iMovie is being even more uncooperative, and it's like, okay, look, if someone's using your program, they feel like they have to beat it into submission for it to work on even a basic level, any greater than being simply open than simply having been opened, then you have a problem. Not like you have a personal problem, like you have a problem to deal with in your program. I'm saying this is I know a bit about more than the average Joe about programming, but not a whole lot. I've not a whole exactly any experience in program developing. That's like, ooh. Like, I do not often get mad at people. Like, I rarely get mad at people. Not because of any moralistic, like, oh, it's bad to get mad at people, or it's unproductive to get mad at people. It's much more simple. I cannot be bothered. Like, I can be pretty lazy sometimes, and I just cannot be bothered to get seriously angry at people, frankly, even when I should quite a lot of the time. You have to really do something really personal to me for me to get more than a little bit annoyed at you. Although that more so applies to people than inanimate objects. Many a times I've spanked toasters for burning my toast, in spite of the fact that I only put the thing down, turned the toaster on, set the toaster to run one time on the minimum time setting. How did you burn it in one run? Seriously, what the fuck? But yeah, I think I've said everything I want to say in terms of positives. If there was anything else, I've forgotten over the last 20 fucking minutes. But yeah, I'm gonna end this video here, and I'm gonna make a separate video talking about most of the negatives. For one, because that means it's a separate video that can be liked, and that's even more engagement. Plus, this is already over 30 minutes long, and I've got to get this out. I would rather as close to as soon as possible at this point, and editing this is going to be a whole big job. Finding the images / making the assets is going to be a job. So, not ballooning this as much as possible, since this is the main review with most of my points. That's good. Oh, and by the way, if the audio sounds shittier now, by the way, that's because I'm at a different recording setup so that my iPad can be plugged in, because while I was beating iMovie into submission, my iPad screen continued to run, and it was draining all the power. When I started the last recording, I said 6%, even though the previous recording I ended at 10%. And it's like, it got down to 3% when I moved it earlier, so it's, yeah. Hit like, show some appreciation, it costs you nothing, it shows my videos to more people, do it for all the headache I've gone through with this video. God. Yeah. Please hit the like button, seriously, please. Costs you nothing, benefits me. If you want to see more, subscribe, and I'm gonna go get some food. I'm gonna peace out and get some food. Bye.
Okay, so I expect to have no more battery-related problems, seeing as I'm recording this 3 weeks later, so much closer to uploading it. But yeah. So yeah, now I'm going to talk about the game's negatives. I might have touched on some of this before, but now I'm really delving into it. The game has a fuck ton of just bugs, just buggy bugs. It's not like there's too many bug types, no, the game glitches out constantly. Well, it runs pretty consistently, but sometimes you fall through the floor, or you see one of the Titan Pokemon seems to have randomly spawned in, but not a Titan size, but it's not interactable, or like some other ridiculous shit. Like, this is a very common one where if you land on the ground in the wrong way on your mount, it'll just continue to dive even though it can't go down because it's on the ground, and the game will eventually just have to reload the map because of it. It seems good at identifying this, but it seems that they weren't actually able to patch it, seeing as this is one of the most common bugs in the game. The game just generally fucks up a lot. It's just something you have to accept to play the game, and it's not as bad as people were making it out at first launch, but it is really, really bad. In addition, the towns are rather unalive. You can't go into into any old random building, like in Swoosh, except there's not even a couple buildings you can go into. Like, there's some towns in the game that are literally devoid of enterable buildings, and the only building you can enter, and most of them, is just the sandwich shop. If you don't count restaurants, which you go into them, and then it brings you to a menu anyway. And so that's a problem, It makes these towns feel unalive, There's been plenty of deeper videos made on just the towns of this game alone, but there's nothing to do there besides gym, or in the cases of really bad cases like Sepepico, there's literally nothing. It's real bad in that way. In addition, there's a lot of areas that are just X province area X, which is very generic, when it feels like there could have been a lot of more interesting names in a lot of these places. I'd argue that the new generation of Pokemon are also pretty weak. There's a lot of evolutions where it just gets bigger, like a lot of them. I'll show some on screen here. It's bad, folks. Of course, there is some cool new Pokemon, as well as some that really do feel kind of forced. It's a big. This is not the strongest generation, okay, of new Pokemon. So part of me wonders if they were actively working to make sure they cracked the 1,000 mark. Then again, if that was to happen, you'd expect them to be at exactly 1,000. And they were like, what, 1,007? So, yeah, maybe not. Also, on a more petty gripe, there's this little inlet next to Levincia, and if you go into it, the Levincia theme stops playing because you're officially out of Levincia. But here's the thing, there's no way to get into this inlet besides either jumping over a river, the same river which crossing a couple meters downstream leads you into Levincia, or walking off a cliff, or the other way to get into this inlet is to go into it from Levincia, and it's literally between Levincia and a cliff, and it's like tiny. It's like this is the sort of place where college students would go to get drunk on like New Year's or like Christmas or in the middle of the summer break or on Sunday. Like, why isn't this part of Levincia? It's like we'll go in there and we'll exploring this city, and it's like sometimes one goes in there because there's a terror rate there. It's distracting when you're trying to look at the aesthetic of the city, and it's like. Of course, some more stuff on the critique end. There's also a couple of other problems that I want to mention that really annoyed me. One is early in the game, there's this tall grass everywhere. That's the case all over the game. But the problem is, in the early game, all the Pokemon are really small, so you can't see them in the tall grass. So you can't see them, and it's very annoying. It's like. It's almost worse than having random encounters levels of I can't see this, oh my god, I hit a Pokemon and now I'm in a fight. Also, sometimes when you get out of fights, you run and then in place of where it plays to, you're on another Pokemon, and so it just shoots into a fight immediately, which can get annoying sometimes if there's a lot of Pokemon in an area. In addition, most Pokemon seem to, if I stand around them long enough, just run at me randomly, which is literally, this is less advanced than how it worked in Sword and Shield. In Sword and Shield, there was a 3 tiers: aggressive Pokemon, passive Pokemon, and fearful Pokemon, i.e. Pokemon that would actively run away from you. Like, basically the aggressive ones, they chased you, the fearful ones ran away from you, and the passive ones just don't give a shit about you. And so that's how it works. So it's literally less advanced than that, albeit there are some exceptions. In addition, it's also the case that when you're gliding with your mount, it's the case that if after you go a certain if after you glide for a certain amount of time, it just suddenly takes away all your horizontal momentum, so you just fall to the ground. This seems like it's a really annoying limitation that makes the gliding ability feel awful to use. It's like, what is this to do? Is this to prevent me from getting out of bounds in some ways? Is this to prevent me from getting into certain areas? Is this to prevent me from getting into certain areas till I can climb? I don't know why, but it just makes it feel awful to use. Like, in Breath of the Wild, the paraglider, your momentum will last as long as your stamina lasts, whereas with this, it's just like, you're gliding along and suddenly, nope! It's really makes it not feel good to use. And lastly, the whole, trainer customization in this game. So in X and Y, there's a wide array of different items you could put on your character. Same goes for Sun and Moon, and Sword and Shield. Then for Scarvio, yeah, you have a fuck ton of different hats and glasses and gloves and shoes and different accessories like that. But then for your top and bottom, you have 4 combinations, all of which are permanently combined, being the same fucking school uniform, but for summer, winter, autumn, and spring. And it's like, I live in the UK, right? I haven't had to wear this to go to school. I still theoretically do, but I've stopped giving a fuck about the rule. But it's like, I also have, like, I get triggered by certain, sensations, and it's like, that stuff was physically triggering for me. I had to wear it, and it's like, I don't like looking at that on my character in a game. At the start, it did genuinely make me relatively uncomfortable, and I just had to tough up and try not to think about it, which was that's not how one wants one's game to work. You know, it would be really also again. It's like there's not really a lot of options for customization. Almost all player characters look roughly the same, and of course there's a lot of random trainer characters that look roughly the same as all these player characters. It's just inordinately homogenous, and it's like, why? Was this to keep it to create a theme of the schooling thing? It's like, there's Penny. Penny flagrantly violates the uniform because they decide to. Why can't we, the player, do that? I know I fucking do that as someone who has to wear a school uniform like this, at least theoretically speaking. You know? It's a whole... It annoys me a lot, but I think, there's no more elaboration on this that's really productive. So at this point, yeah, on to the conclusion.
Ultimately speaking, the game is just... It feels really, really rushed. Between all the bugs and the generic names and the unfinished towns, it's just... It feels like they didn't spend enough time... They didn't get enough time to make it, and it's like... I really want to... People have already moved on to talking about DLC for this game as if nothing happened, but I really want this game to get an Emerald or Ultra equivalent, just to see what this game would look like finished. I mean, I remember playing Sun and Moon and thinking it had a really bare-bones post-game, as well as looking back on it, there's also some other ways which was like, yeah, corners were cut, and you can tell that because of Ultra Sun and Moon, where it's like, yeah, this is Sun and Moon, but it's actually finished, and they cut the goods, and they cut this whole plotline about Luzamine and Lily, and the Nile Ego, which was dumb, I'll admit. But it's like, on one hand, Game Freak's practice of trying to get people to buy the same game as many times as possible between the two versions, and then also the follow-up variant is a hot take that's a anti-consumer practice. I wish they'd stop doing that. On the other hand, I want to see what this would look like if it was finished. So it's like a weird thing. It's like, frankly, Sword and Shield had two problems. One, they were too formulaic, and two, they were rushed. Scarlet and Violet amended one of those problems in that it was too formulaic, but it's still rushed. If it wasn't rushed, it could have been one of the best games in the series. Hell, a Pokemon Emerald equivalent to this could still be one of the best games in the series, but again, that's anti-consumerist shit. And of course, there's also... And it's like, one can't just not buy it until the next year, plus one, spoilers get online, and two, you don't even know if it's going to be worth it, because they might just do an X and Y, or better than that, a Pokemon Black and White 2, where they make a cool-ass sequel. That's on the off chance they actually finish their first one. But yeah, it's or a DLC at this point, or fuck knows. They seem to be committed to doing something new every generation as a surprise. But it's like, yeah... Frankly, I do think you could keep this new formula for the next gen, but please don't release it till 2026 at the earliest. And it's not January, that's November 2026, preferably November 2027. Okay, Game Freak, Pokemon Company, whoever's responsible for this. Of course, one could go into a deep rant about how this all happens or why we think this all happens for a much longer time than I'm spending on this, but that's the point, okay? So hit the like button, it costs you nothing, and it pushes my stuff. If you were watching, if you're seeing this, you've been watching for over half an hour. You clearly like it, so tell YouTube that and get them to show it to more people, please, okay? Bye. Okay, so, I hope this audio is okay. So, as of recording this video was supposed to come out 3 days ago, and yeah, it's a bit of a mess. Some of the audio later in the video is bad and messed up, and a whole bunch of other stuff's just messed up. Not as messed up as I worried it would be, but yeah. I'm as of now, I'm intending to release things on either Tuesday or Wednesday just for the sake of adaptability, but yeah, even then, it's like, Wednesday was 2 days ago. This video is firmly late, and it's like, some of the later audio in it, as well as the editing, can get very rushed. It's very much, I'm making fun of Pokemon for being a rushed mess, and then my video doing that is a rushed mess. How ironic, eh? But, yeah, truthfully, the lateness of this video could affect future videos to a certain degree. I do worry about that, but yeah. It's a whole thing. What the fuck? Why do you keep going in and out? It's sorry, stuff that's going on in the house in the real world, and it's like, anyway. So yeah, the video is a kind of a rushed mess.
in that way, and it's also late, but hey, at least it's finally getting uploaded. I mean, it's kind of understandable. As of now, it's the longest video I've ever uploaded to YouTube. They both take a long time to make, and also it would also be intimidating to work on. So EFD, it's a thing. But yeah, it's all here now, and hopefully my iPad actually lets me move it into photos. Fucking hell.